Hello everyone. Welcome to session 3 of IS Bhavar's rapid revision series of 500 high probable topics for prelims 2020. I'm Preetham Reddy and I'll be dealing 15 important topics which are very crucial for prelims examination this year in each session. So our next topic is recent Supreme Court judgments dealing with fundamental rights. So in 2019 there was a question regarding right to marry is one's own choice or right to choose one's partner is one's own choice comes under which particular fundamental rights. It was derived from recent Supreme Court judgment Hadia case. At the same time, 2018 there was a question regarding right to privacy is a part of which fundamental right derived from the Puttaswamy judgment. So on similar lines, like this year I am expecting a question on right to internet or right to information or right to know. So recently Supreme Court ruled that access to internet is a part of fundamental right under Article 19. So Supreme Court also ruled that internet is very important, but it cannot be elevated to the status of a human right. And Supreme Court ruled that right to internet is an integral part of Article 19 subclause 1A, which deals with freedom of speech and expression. So next important judgment is the right to live-in relationships. So Supreme Court also ruled that right to live-in relationship is a fundamental right. So Supreme Court validated live-in relations and granted individuals freedom to live as they think best. So Supreme Court also said that there was no law which prohibits live-in relationships or premarital sex. Therefore, living together is a right to life under Article 21. Next important judgment is the right to information or right to know. So Supreme Court held that right to know, which is provided by Right to Information Act 2005, is not a mere statutory right, but it should be treated as a facet of the fundamental right guaranteed under Article 19 and 21. So we have to remember that right to information or right to know is both part of Article 19 and 21 and is now a fundamental right. Right to vote. So recently Supreme Court said that voting is a fundamental freedom guaranteed under Article 19 subclause 1A, that is freedom of speech and expression. So all these four rights, and we already know right to education is a part of fundamental right. So all these four rights recently Supreme Court had declared that they are part of fundamental rights. However, the next three rights, so especially with right to health there is a confusion, but still Supreme Court is yet to declare whether right to health is a fundamental right. And with respect to right to own private property and right to reservation, Supreme Court has declared that it is not a part of fundamental rights. Okay, so remember this one. Supreme Court held that right to own private property is a human right. Therefore, state cannot take possession of it without following certain due procedure, and also state cannot grab the private land and claim it as its own. So that would make a state as an encroacher. So Supreme Court just held that right to own private property is a human right but not a fundamental right. And I think July 2020 judgment, Supreme Court held that right to reservation is not a fundamental right. So next important topic are laws dealing with foreigners and illegal non-citizens. So since Citizenship Amendment Act was in news often, we have to know certain laws which are dealing with foreigners and illegal migrants. So Foreigners Act 1864 was the first enactment to deal with foreigners. Then later on Passport Entry into India Act 1920 empowered the government to make certain to remove any person who entered without a passport. So Passport Entry Act provided that government can remove from India any person who entered without a passport. So Foreigners Act 1940 and 1946 later on, they defined foreigners and also empowered government to make provisions for prohibiting, regulating and restricting the entry of foreigners into India, and which is still followed. So this defined foreigners, and also it empowered the government to make provisions prohibiting, regulating or restricting the entry of the foreigners into India. Next, we have to understand this concept of burden of proof, which was provided in Foreigners Act 1940. Okay, burden of proof, this becomes important because of the recent NRC process, and also later on government is planning to implement NPR. So we shall understand what is this concept of burden of proof. So whenever a question arising whether a person is a national or whether he is a foreigner or not, the onus lies on that same person to prove whether he is a foreigner or whether he is a citizen. So the onus of proving that he was not a foreigner lay upon the person itself. So even today, the burden of proofs lies with the person and not with the authority. So you have to remember. Next, Citizenship Act 1955 provides for like it defines illegal migrants, and it says illegal migrants are those foreigners who entered India without a valid passport. So it declares that illegal migrants are those foreigners who enter India without a valid passport. At the same time, those persons who have entered India with a valid passport, however, they remained here beyond the permitted period of time. Okay, so remember these two clauses. So Citizenship Act 1955 defines illegal migrant. So next important topic what we have to know is regarding the Foreigners Tribunal and recent amendment done to the Foreigners Tribunal Order 1964. Okay, so Foreigners Tribunal are usually like they are created according to this Foreigners Tribunal Order 1964, and also they can be created under the Foreigners Act of 1946. And this Foreigners Tribunal are very important because they have the authority to decide whether a person is a foreigner within the ambit of the Foreigners Act 1946. Okay, so you have to remember Foreigners Act 1946. So this empowers Foreigners Tribunal with the authority to decide whether a person is a foreigner or not. Okay, and recently there was amendments done to the Foreigners Tribunal Order 1964. So earlier Foreigners Tribunal was set up only, the power to set up Foreigners Tribunal was only vested with the center. However, now district magistrates of all the states and UTs can set up Foreigners Tribunal. So next important point for like topic for the day is National Population Register. So National Population Register, the main objective is to create a comprehensive identity database of every usual resident. So you have to remember this word usual resident. So it is a comprehensive identity database of every usual resident, and usual resident is defined as a person who has resided in a local area for the past 6 months or more, or a person who intends to reside in that area for the next 6 months or more. So you have to remember two things here. One is usual resident is defined as a person, so person who has already resided past 6 months or more, and who intends to reside for the next 6 months or more. So they are called as usual residents. Okay, so this NPR database will contain both demographic as well as biometric particulars, and also it is a mandatory of every usual resident. So the mandatory word is very important. It is mandatory for every usual resident of India to register in the NPR. Okay, and what is the difference between NPR and NCR? So unlike the NRC, the NPR will also include foreigners living in India. So NRC is a register dealing with only the citizens, but NPR will have information of foreigners who are living in India. And you have to know that National Population Register, so this particular exercise will be conducted by the Office of Registrar General, which is under the Home Ministry. So next important point or topic of the day is the concept of regulatory sandbox. So recently you would have read in the news that RBI recently issued the final framework for this regulatory sandbox. So we'll see what is this sandbox. So regulatory sandbox usually refers to live testing of new products or services in a controlled test regulatory environment. I'm repeating again, regulatory sandbox usually refers to the live testing of new products or services in a controlled or test regulatory environment for which regulators may permit certain regulatory relaxations. So usually they get certain relaxations for the limited purpose of the testing. Okay, so what is the main objective of the sandbox? It will help to foster innovation. So the main objective of the sandbox was to foster responsible innovation in financial services, promote efficiency and bring benefit to consumers. So just know, if in case a question comes on the regulatory sandbox, it deals with the live testing of new products or services in a controlled or regulated environment. Okay, so next important topic is currency devaluation. So obviously we would have read many articles where US had declared China as a currency manipulator, and also US had accused China of deliberately weakening their yuan so that to make Chinese exports more attractive, right? So we'll try to know what is this currency devaluation as well as why countries devalue their currency. So currency devaluation involves certain measures taken like to strategically lower the purchasing power of a nation's own currency. So I'll repeat again. So currency devaluation involves taking measures to strategically lower the purchasing power of a nation's own currency. So why countries devalue their currency? So countries pursue this particular strategy so that they can gain a competitive edge in global trade, and also they can reduce sovereign debt burdens. So a weak domestic currency makes a nation's export more competitive in global markets and simultaneously makes imports more expensive. So higher export volumes per economic growth, right? And higher export volumes will also provide more and more employment, as well as this lowers current account deficit and also helps to increase GDP growth. That's the reason countries use this particular strategy to devalue their currency. So finally, three important reasons are important. Okay, so remember those three important points. That one, the countries gain some advantage with respect to exports, like exports get boosted, trade deficits get synced or shrinked, and finally it also helps to reduce sovereign debt burdens. So these are the benefits. So next important topic for the day is PM Ujjwala Yojana. So recently Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas informed that the target of 8 crore LPG connections is met, and now this PM Ujjwala Yojana scheme is closed. However, news reports and articles covered that only 3 states have become kerosene free. Later on, Parliamentary Committee on Petroleum recommended that the scheme should be extended to poor households in urban and semi-urban slum areas. Okay, so remember that this PM Ujjwala Yojana is a scheme of the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and it provides LPG connections to women from BPL households. And recently, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has claimed that the target of 8 crore LPG connections have been met. And usually they provide LPG connections to women from BPL households identified through the socio-economic caste census. So BPL women are provided with deposit-free LPG connection with financial assistance. So it also has financial assistance of rupees 1,600 per connection by the center. Next important topic is Mahua or Maduka indica. So this Mahua flowers and also Van Dhan Vikas Karyakram. So government launched Mahua based alcoholic drink under this Van Dhan Vikas Karyakram. So recently government launched this Mahua based alcoholic drink. So let's try to know what is this Mahua flowers, where it is found. So this Mahua is a prominent forest tree. So it is a prominent forest tree in tribal areas of Bastar in Chhattisgarh, and also some part of Andhra Pradesh, or I think Telangana. So Mahua is a particular forest tree which are found in tribal belts of Chhattisgarh and Telangana. So these Mahua flowers are a very rich source of sugar and are said to contain vitamins, minerals and calcium, and these flowers are fermented and distilled so that country made liquor or country beer can be made out of it. The beverage called Mahua Nutri beverage has a high nutritional value and relatively low alcohol content. That's the reason government is trying to give push to this particular uh, traditional local commodity so that it will help tribals, or it plays an important role in the rural economy. So let's know what is this Vandan Vikas Karakram. So Vandan Vikas Karakram is a nationwide program for training tribal clusters so that they can add value to their produce and sell it in a package format so that income can be increased. Okay, so it is a nationwide program for capacity building of tribal people, and also it provides training to the tribal clusters. So the products marketed under the scheme include certain primary level processing, handicrafts, textiles, food items, jams, jewelry, etc. And the implementing agency of this Vandan Vikas Karakram will be the TriFed. And this Vandan Vikas Karakram was launched in April 2018. So there might be a question like, what is this Mahua or Maduka indica refers to? So it refers to a particular flower or particular prominent tree in the tribal belt region of Chhattisgarh and Telangana. Okay. So next important topic of the day is the GI tags. So there were 31 GI items which got listed in 2019. So I have divided this 31 GI items into different categories. So in agriculture we have 16 new GI items, in textile we have 6 new items, in handicrafts 2, foodstuffs 4, natural goods 1, manufacturing goods 1, and wines and spirits 1. So we'll see all those things. So regarding agriculture, so as I said, we had 16, and this year it has been a lot of numbers and GI items getting listed in 2019. So later on in later sessions we will deal with certain GI items which were listed in 2020, but first we will try to remember GI items in 2019. Okay, so in agriculture category, Himachali Kala Jeera. So obviously it comes with the name Himachali, and we might not expect a question on this one, but we can expect a question on Kandhamal Haldi. So Kandhamal Haldi is a turmeric from Odisha. Jeera Pool rice, it is from Chhattisgarh. Kola chilli is from Goa. Gulbarga Tur dal. So Gulbarga is a district in Karnataka. So Tur dal from Gulbarga from Karnataka. Sirsi Supari, which is a arkanut grown in Karnataka region. So Kodaikanal Malai Pundu garlic. So Pundu means garlic. So this got Tamil Nadu got like GI listed. Erode Manjal. Manjal means turmeric. So turmeric from Tamil Nadu. Tirur beetle leaf. So this beetle leaf from Kerala. And Kaji Nemo. So it's a particular lemon species from Assam. Okay. So remember Kandhamal Haldi from Odisha, Jeera Pool rice from Chhattisgarh, Kola chilli from Goa, Tur dal from Karnataka, and Arikanut, that is Sirsi Supari from Karnataka, and Malai Pundu from Tamil Nadu, Erode turmeric from Tamil Nadu, Tirur wheat leaf from Kerala, and Kaji Nemo, that is lemon from Assam. So these are the agriculture related GI tag, and apart from those 11, there were 5 types of coffee. So coffee like Araku Valley, which is quite often in news, is from Andhra Pradesh. Coorg, Chikmagalur and Baba Budangiri. All these 3 coffee producing region are from Karnataka, and Wayanad Robust coffee from Kerala. There were 6 important textiles and 2 important handicrafts. So total 8 GI items. So Mizoram had like around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 GI items. It is called Maram and Notekre, Tavlopuan and Pandam and Maizo Panche. So all these uh, are like certain different variety of shawls which are prepared in Mizoram. So try to remember these names and they are associated with Mizoram. So next textile is Idu Mishi textile from Arunachal Pradesh and Tirubhuvan silk sarees and Khandagni silk sarees. So any silk saree related to this year, if the question is asked, it is from Tamil Nadu. Okay, Tirubhuvanam silk saree from Tamil Nadu and Khandangi sarees from Tamil Nadu. And food related stuff, Odisha Rasgulla, obviously name is Odisha, so we don't expect a question. Palani Panchamrutam is from Tamil Nadu. It is a like temple prasad. And Sri Villiputtur Palkova is from Tamil Nadu. And Marayur Jaggery is from Kerala. So under natural goods, we have sandstone, that is Chunar Balua Pattar from Uttar Pradesh. And from manufacturing goods, we have Dindugal locks from Tamil Nadu and wines and spirits, Ireland. So Ireland, this wines and spirit got listed from GI India. Okay, so remember that all these 31 items were in news, and try to remember some of its names so that if in case a question is asked in prelims, it will be easy to answer. So next important topic is participatory guarantee scheme. So this participatory guarantee scheme is related to a process of certifying organic products. Okay, so participatory guarantee scheme, like we might not think it is something related to organic products. Okay, they might simply ask a question, participatory guarantee scheme is related to, so they are related to certifying organic products. And PGS is a quality assurance initiative that is locally relevant, and it emphasizes the participation of stakeholders including producers and consumers, and they operate usually outside the framework of third party certification. So just remember that participatory guarantee scheme deals with certifying organic products and also quality assurance initiative. Fourth important point is this PGS is part of International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement. Okay, so according to 2008 definition formulated by this particular International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement, which is uh, the umbrella organization for the organic agriculture movement. So PGS are locally focused quality assurance system. So finally you have to remember that it is a quality assurance initiative and it is used to certify organic products. Okay, the government's 2015 participatory guarantee scheme manual underlined that the system in India uses four important pillars, that is the Indian system is based on participatory approach, shared vision, transparency and trust. Next important topic for the day is Global Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So this particular topic is very important this year because it was recently launched during 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. And this Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure envisions enabling measurable reduction in infrastructure losses from disasters, including extreme climate events. So you have to remember that it envisions enabling measurable reduction in infrastructure losses. So just remember that CDRI deals with the reduction in infrastructure losses from disasters, which also includes the climate events. Okay, so the main objective is to expand universal access to basic services and enabling the prosperity. Okay, so this global coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure would work at the intersection of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction as well as Paris climate change agreement. And this CDRI, that is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, would conduct country specific and global activities. And this CDRI will uphold the UN Agenda 2030 principle, that is to achieve universal inclusion, which is a UN Agenda 2030 principle. Next important topic is 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. What was the major decisions and outcomes? So it is important that you go through the major decisions and outcomes of this 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. The first one is the Global Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and second point is India to increase share of non-fossil fuels to 175 gigawatts by 2022, and further it wants to take it to 450 gigawatt. Okay, and also it is important that new leadership group was recently announced, to drive industry transition to low carbon economy. Okay, low carbon, to achieve low carbon economy. Also, international shipping industry is set to develop the roadmap for decarbonization. So try to know what were the outcomes, and which outcomes or decisions are a part of which particular convention or climate action summits. Okay. Next important topic is Drought Toolbox. So Drought Toolbox was launched during COP14 UNCCD, which was held recently in Delhi. So it is also called as Delhi Declaration. Okay. So this United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So in the recent COP of this UNCCD, so Drought Toolbox was launched, and this toolbox will provide easy access to tools and certain case studies and resources to drought stakeholders. So with this Drought Toolbox, one can easily understand certain case studies and resources and also certain tools. The major objective is to support designing of national drought policy plan. So remember that it will support national drought policy plan, and also it helps to boost the resilience of people and ecosystem to drought. Drought Toolbox is currently developed as part of the drought initiative, which was part of COP13 CCD. Okay, so just know that this Drought Toolbox will help to boost the resilience of the people and ecosystem to drought, as well as it provides certain vital information regarding the droughts. So next important topic for us is the COP14 UNCCD, that is Delhi Declaration. So in this Delhi Declaration, India writes its commitment to restore 26 million hectares degraded land by 2030. So just I said, like, you have to know certain major decisions and outcomes of whatever the conventions which were held recently. So under COP14 UNCCD, India raised its commitments to restore 26 million hectare of degraded land by 2030. So earlier it was 21 million. So now it has raised it to 26 million. India also pledged to restore 50 lakh hectares of degraded land by 2030. And Delhi Declaration called for global action by each country on how to achieve the land degradation neutrality. So next important point what we have to know is India called upon the leadership of UNCCD to conceive a global water action agenda, which is central in order to achieve the land degradation neutrality strategy. So India called this UNCCD leadership to conceive a global water action agenda, which is very much central to the land degradation neutrality strategy. Okay, and one landmark decision is to, like, India said, like, every country should come together for better mitigation and to manage the risk of drought and to build resilience. And as we read in, like, previous topic, this Drought Toolbox was launched in UNCCD. Next important topic, the final topic of the day, is 10 new Ramsar sites were added recently. Okay, so we'll see, like, wetlands, 10 new wetlands were declared, and Maharashtra gets its first Ramsar site, that is Nandur Madhyameshwar Bird Sanctuary. So Maharashtra got its first Ramsar site, Nandur Madhyameshwar, and Punjab, which had already got 3 Ramsar sites, added 3 more now, that is Nangal Wildlife Sanctuary, Keshopur Wildlife Sanctuary, or Gurdaspur, and Bias wetland site. Uttar Pradesh, which had one Ramsar site before, now it added 6 more, that is Sarsai Nawar Jeel, Nawabganj, Samsarpur, Sandhi Bird Sanctuary, Parvati Arga Bird Sanctuary, and Saman Bird Sanctuary. So it is important. I am attaching certain PPTs dealing with all these things, and under which like we have very crucial information. So try to read it. So under each wetland they have given some unique features and species, endangered species, which are associated with it. Okay, thank you for watching the video, and do subscribe and do comment if you have any questions.